So we've applied the hair to our scalp. We've just gone over the basic settings for doing that. And this is what we're looking at currently. We click play, the hair sags due to the gravity in the scene. And this is what we end up with. Obviously, we've still got a lot of work to do on it. The hair clumps are too thin. Not the right style, maybe not the right length or anything like that. But before we start to think about what style we're going to turn this into, let's just have a look at some of the settings associated with this hair. And then we can take things from there. So before we do, let's just organise our scene a little bit. If I bring back the outliner, I'm going to create some layers just to make it easier for us to hide things, bring things back, and view other elements. So let's just create a layer here. We'll give it a colour, maybe brown. We'll call this, let's just call this hair. Save, and we'll put the scalp. We'll just dump all these hair systems into it, like so, and then we can switch those on and off. Let's create another layer. Let's call this girl, make that pink. Okay, maybe call it body. Will that work? Yep. And we'll add the girl into that. Add selected objects, and then we can obviously bring that back. Now the beauty of putting it in a layer is we can set it to template, or we can set it to reference, which means that we won't be able to accidentally select it. Template, so we can see where she is in reference to the hair. So the hair maybe is too short or too long. Because we can see the body, we can sort of work with it in the scene without accidentally selecting it. And then let's just call this last one props, maybe. Make that a different colour again. So we want the backdrop, the rabbit, the tears, the sheet. Maybe put her eyes into the body layer, like so. But you get the general idea with that. We're not going to linger on adding layers a bit more. This just allowed us to be in a bit more control over the scene. So if we bring back the props, again, we can quickly turn those on and off, set them to template or reference. So we'll just turn them off for now. So let's come back to the hair. If we select the hair, click Control A, it opens up all the options, allowing us to now control how the hair is going to be looking. Now, we've got this Paint Effects hair shape here. We've got our hair system shape here, which controls the actual hairs. Paint Effects shape here. Obviously, you've got control over the actual paint effects. We have the nucleus. As you can see in here, we have gravity. Now, this is sort of the dynamics area. This node controls all the dynamics associated with this hair system, or it could be the whole scene, depending on what you link it to. But for now, this has been created alongside our hair system, just so that we can add some effects to it. And obviously, at the moment, by default, we have our gravity, which we saw when we click play. This gravity setting here is making the hair fall, but obviously, we can affect air speed, air density, wind speed, wind direction. We can add in wind and noise and things, but we'll come to that later. So let's go back to our hair system shape. Go back to frame 1, -1, sorry. And let's just work our way down here and just have a general look at what we've got. Display quality, obviously, as we reduce that, it's displaying less hairs. This is so if you've got lots of hair in this scene, you can reduce the display quality so that you can interact with it a lot quicker. Obviously, it will render out at your full resolution. So clump and hair shape. So this is obviously where we're going to start off. Hairs per clump. We saw this previously when we were creating our hair. By default we left it at 10, but you can turn this up, and as you can see it's just adding more hairs to that clump or less. So let's leave it at 10 for now. Baldness map, we'll come to that later, but that's just going to dictate which areas are bald, which areas are not. Subsegments and thinning. So subsegments we'll probably see if I press play, just let them sag a little bit. You can see there, if I zoom in, down to 0, it's quite angular. Subsegments, it's just going to soften that out. Again, this is just like a render and display option here. We can come back to those sort of things later. The same with thinning, we'll come back to that. And clump twist, obviously that's just going to twist the root of the clump. If you want it to, well, twist, for want of a better word. Bend follow just dictates how much it's going to bend, follow the actual bend of the hair. But now we're coming down to the bits that we're more interested in, and that's clump width. If I adjust that, you can see we've got a thinner clump and a wider clump. Now we can go in and manually say put in 3, and that's filling out the hair a lot more. Now obviously the hair's quite thin, so you may want to then go up, add in more hairs per clump. But if I rewind and click play, it may impact on the actual evaluation and the playback of it. So let's drop that back down to 10, just as we're tinkering. And what we can do actually, I should have mentioned this earlier, but rather than going in, clicking play, having to stop, rewind, we could always go to our NSolver interactive playback option. What this will allow you to do is it will play through the time slider, so evaluate the hair, but allow you to edit the settings and see them interactively. So click interactive playback like so. Now what I can do, I can adjust the clump width, and as you can see, the systems are affecting the hair as I'm adjusting it. So maybe we want the hair thicker, like so. The hair width, we're not going to see anything in this. This is purely for rendering, so it's going to be the thickness of each hair. So again, we'll come back to that later on. As we're working our way down, you'll start to see these graphs here. Clump width scale. Now this will tie in with our clump width here. As you can see, as we can see with our hair, if I just stop this and go back so it's standing out straight, each clump is starting off thick at the base and thin at the end. And what that corresponds to this graph here. So it's thick at the base, thinner at the end. If we adjust that, we can make it flat, so it's the same width overall. We can bring it down to make it taper to a nice point, so it's more of like a manga style hairstyle. You can obviously adjust this so that it's linear, smooth. If we select this one here, linear, so it's going more of a linear curve. Smooth, as we saw, gives you a nice soft curve there, which gives us this nice bulge effect there. If you want a bit more control over this, we can click on this button here. This opens up a bigger window. It just makes it easier for us to edit. Now rather than just the 2 points here, we can click in here, add in another point. So maybe we want the hair to be thinner here, thicker here, and we're just adjusting that interactively, just like so. So let's delete those two. As you can see, as I move up and down, it's affecting the hair and how it looks. And again, we can go in, set that to linear, so the output of that is going to be linear there. Select this one if we want that to be linear there. Set that to linear. We'll just set this to smooth. Set this back to smooth to get that nice flow like so. So that's the clump width scale. Again, hair width scale, that will apply the same principle but to this hair width value. So it will, looking at the default graph, the hair's quite thick to start off with and then it tapers off quickly at the end. Again, this is a render issue which we'll come to later on. Clump curl. Again, this is going to adjust how curly your hair is. As I adjust it up and down, you can see the hair curling in the viewport. So that's if you want curly hair or straight hair. And again, you've got the graph, so it could maybe start off straight and get curlier towards the tips, or start off curly and get straighter towards the tips, or maybe curly in the middle. It's entirely up to you. You've got that flexibility there to do what you like. Clump flatness. As you can see, each clump is quite circular. If I look from this point here, if I bring that up, it's going to flatten this hair into more panel-like clumps. Bring that back down. It's more circular here. Again, we can add in an extra point there so that it's flatter towards the end. Or maybe remove that point so it's the same scale all along. So as you can see, as we're working our way through these options, it's quite interactive and user-friendly. And a lot of it is quite obvious, really. You've got your main attributes, and then you've got these graphs, so you can tweak how things work along the length of each clump. Let's go down a little bit more. Clump interpolation and interpolation range. Again, this is just adjusting how the clumps are looking. With a lot of these, I urge you to just open up the file, or do like I said originally, just create a sphere which comes in with some nice UVs, apply an NHAIR system and just work your way through these and play around with them. That's all you need to do. And then you'll get yourself used to them, used to how the hair is going to look and how these affect the hair. You know, and then you'll feel a lot more comfortable with using hair. So let's just go back to interactive playback so we can see the hair fall. There we go. And again, we can adjust these while it's falling so we can see the hair in motion. Maybe undo that, undo that. So maybe just go through and have a play around with all these settings now and just get yourself used to using them, familiarize yourself with them. And in the next video, we'll just work our way down, see if we can look at anything else. Although, to be honest, collisions, dynamic attributes, some of these are more render specific, so we'll leave those until later on in the tutorial. But yep, for now, just play around with the hair a little bit more, and we'll just carry on in the next lesson.